Demons aren't just stories whispered in the dark. They've haunted humanity for thousands of years, shaping our religions, our fears, and even our dreams. From ancient Mesopotamia to modern pop culture, these entities have taken countless forms, each reflecting the questions we dare not ask. What is evil? What is sacred? And what happens when that balance is broken? In this video, we're tracing the complete history of demonology, from the terrifying spirits of early civilizations to the demons of religion, literature, and even psychology. You'll learn why humans have always tried to name, catalogue, and understand evil, and how these fears have influenced art, law, and culture across every continent. By the end, you'll see that demons aren't just creatures of myth. They're mirrors of ourselves, warning us, tempting us, and sometimes guiding us. Before we dive in, make sure to hit that subscribe button so you never miss a journey into history, myth, and the unexplained. And I'd love to know, where are you watching from? Drop your location in the comments. I read every single one. They have gone by many different names. Pazuzu, as modern media often calls him. At first, they were understood as storms and natural forces. Later, they became angels. Today, they exist mostly as symbols. Yet through every transformation, they have never left us. Long before demonology became a discipline, humanity was already struggling to understand the nature of evil. What follows is the long record of that struggle, the history of demonology. Before the word demon was ever spoken, fear already shaped the world. Early civilizations did not rely on theology to explain suffering. Instead, they gave it form and identity. They tried to confine it in clay figures, drive it away with spoken spells, or seek protection from stronger supernatural powers. These were not abstract ideas. People truly believed these forces could steal the breath from children, ruin harvests, or push a person into madness. In ancient Mesopotamia, the land between the great rivers, demons were seen as manifestations of misfortune, decay, and terror. They were believed to dwell in deserts, hide within homes, slip through cracks in walls, or move unseen through the air. Among the most feared was Pazuzu, associated with the destructive western wind. He was described as a disturbing hybrid, part human and part animal, with canine jaws, eagle-like talons, scaled skin, and wings. He was blamed for famine and locust invasions, particularly during dry seasons. Yet fear of him was also turned into protection. His image was carved into amulets and plaques, not to invite him, but to ward off an even greater danger. That greater danger was Lamashtu. Unlike many spirits, she answered to no god. She was believed to act entirely on her own. Lamashtu was feared as an enemy of mothers and children, blamed for miscarriages, poisoned milk, and the disappearance of infants. Her appearance reflected this terror. She was depicted with a lion's head, donkey-like teeth, elongated fingers gripping snakes, and riding a donkey. The fear she inspired was so intense that entire collections of incantations were created solely to defend against her. One protective ritual involved placing a figurine of Lamashtu near the head of a bed, along with offerings of bread and water meant to distract or appease her. Another group of spirits were known as the Rabisu. These beings were thought to lurk in doorways, graveyards, and abandoned spaces. They were not always considered purely evil. Some texts describe them as agents sent by the gods to deliver punishment rather than chaos. Still, their presence brought the same results. Illness, fear, nightmares, fevers, and paralysis were all attributed to them. Entering an unclean place or disturbing an old grave was believed to attract their attention. Protection required ritual knowledge. Spells were written on clay tablets, and protective figures were buried beneath walls and thresholds. One Akkadian incantation declares authority over spirits of night, disease, and death. By this point, Mesopotamian demonology had become a practical system of survival. Knowing a spirit's name, reciting the correct words, and securing physical boundaries were believed to be essential defenses. In ancient Egypt, the boundary between demon and god was far less defined. The universe itself was understood as a balance between order and chaos. The most dangerous embodiment of chaos was Apep, the massive serpent. Each night, he was believed to rise from the abyss to attack the sun god Ra during his journey through the underworld. Apep was not viewed as evil in a moral sense. He represented destruction itself, the collapse of balance, light, and existence. To oppose him, priests performed rituals meant to weaken his power. His name was written in red ink, his image was trampled, cursed, and burned. Ancient spells describe his defeat in graphic terms, calling for his body to be broken and his strength undone. These rituals were meant to erase his influence and preserve cosmic order. Yet, not all dangers in Egyptian belief were cosmic. The underworld, known as the Duat, was filled with threats that were personal and immediate. Among them was Ammit, the devourer of the unworthy. She was imagined as a creature made from Egypt's most feared animals, with the head of a crocodile, the body of a lion, and the hindquarters of a hippopotamus. If the heart of the deceased weighed heavier than the feather of Ma'at, Ammit consumed it. This did not lead to punishment or suffering, but to complete erasure, a second and final death. To reach the Hall of Judgment, the soul had to pass through multiple gates guarded by terrifying beings with names such as Mistress of Anger or He Who Lives on Snakes. These guardians demanded secret names and ritual knowledge. Without them, the soul could be destroyed or turned away. Because of this danger, the dead were buried with scrolls, amulets, and written spells in red and black ink. The Book of the Dead served as a guide, providing everything the soul needed to survive the journey. Egyptian demonology functioned as a carefully organized system where every threat was identified and every name had a specific countermeasure. Then came a major shift. With the rise of Zoroastrianism, the universe was divided into opposing moral forces. Zoroastrianism was one of the earliest belief systems to divide the universe into opposing metaphysical forces, good and evil. At its center stood Ahura Mazda, the wise Lord of Truth, and his shadow, Angra Mainyu, also known as Ahriman, the destructive spirit. Ahriman was not simply chaos. He was calculated malice. He embodied death, disease, darkness, and deception, waging a conscious war against creation itself. Unlike the wandering demons of Mesopotamia or the gatekeepers of Egypt, Ahriman existed within a precise and ordered cosmology. His followers, the Daevas, were once divine spirits who turned away from truth. They came to represent lies, violence, and corruption. They were organized, intelligent, and relentlessly focused on dismantling the order established by Ahura Mazda. Zoroastrian texts such as the Vendidad and the Yasna describe Ahriman's methods in detail, tempting humanity into impurity, spreading disease, and distorting thought and belief. Against him stood fire temples, ritual discipline, cleanliness, and sacred prayer. These were not symbolic acts, they were weapons. Human behavior mattered. Every lie strengthened the forces of destruction. Every act of impurity fed the enemy. This marked the moment demonology became theology. Evil was no longer just dangerous, it was intentional. And it had a name. While Western demonology would later formalize hierarchies and grimoires, other cultures had already developed their own systems of spirits and monsters, beings that punished, tormented, and lingered at the boundary between life and death. In Hindu tradition, the line between God, spirit, and demon is fluid. The Asuras were once divine beings, rivals of the Devas. Over time, they became figures of pride and ambition, not inherently evil, but dangerous through their defiance of Dharma. Then came the Rakshasas, flesh-eating shapeshifters known for deception and cruelty. In the Ramayana, entire armies of Rakshasas wage war against the gods, led by the demon king Ravana. Deeper still were the Vetalas, corpse-possessing spirits that hung from trees and haunted cremation grounds. They lingered between worlds, feeding on the dead and speaking in riddles to those who dared confront them. Some were guardians, others were predators. What mattered was whether you disturbed them or sought their help. In Chinese belief, the dead did not always find peace. Improper burial, unpaid debts, or unresolved vengeance could bind a spirit to the living world. Such ghosts clung to existence through hunger, regret, or rage. Alongside them were the Mogi, malevolent demons blamed for madness, illness, and domestic ruin. To control these forces, Chinese religion developed a vast spiritual bureaucracy. The afterlife became a court of law. Zhong Kui, the demon slayer, emerged as a legendary figure, a fierce, bearded enforcer capable of commanding spirits and banishing demons outright. Taoist priests wielded power through ritual, burning talismans known as fu, written in vermilion ink to activate their authority. Even the underworld was ordered, ruled by judges, governed by law. In Japan, demons were not condemned to hell. They emerged from mountains, crept through forests, and slipped into abandoned houses. Oni, the horned and tusked monsters, appeared during times of violence or plague, acting as punishing spirits or corrupted humans. Their skin could be red or blue, and their hunger was endless. But Japan's demonology went far beyond Oni. The term ikai covers countless strange beings, some playful, others nightmarish. Among them, tsukumogami are ordinary objects that gain life after 100 years, a forgotten sandal, a teapot, or a lantern imbued with a lingering spirit. These demons were metaphors as much as monsters, embodying isolation, resentment, shame, and the fear of losing one's place in the world. Yet they were also honored, offered rice, soothed with song or appeased in festivals. Fear here could be relational, not just a curse. Across West Africa, the Ashanti speak of the Obayefo, a vampiric witch spirit that feeds on children, glowing with an eerie phosphorescence and driven by greed and envy. In some stories, they walk among the living, only revealing their true form at night. Further south, among Zulu communities, the Tokoloshe is a mischievous but deadly spirit. Small, hairy and grotesque, it is said to crawl into beds at night, choking sleepers or attacking them in dreams. Some households raise their beds on bricks to stay out of reach. In Tanzania, the Papaba haunted the island of Pemba, rumored to shapeshift and communicate telepathically. Its presence caused mass hysteria, with entire communities sleeping outdoors, armed, awaiting a shadow that may have existed only in belief. In North America, the Wendigo terrorized Algonquian communities, a spirit of winter, famine, and insatiable hunger. To witness it was to see a man consumed by cannibalism, emaciated, frozen, eternally ravenous. It was both a monster and a warning. Among the Navajo, skinwalkers were witches who could take animal forms or steal human faces, representing the ultimate violation of cultural taboos. Even naming them aloud was dangerous. In the Aztec world, Cihuateteo, spirits of women who died in childbirth, returned on certain nights to roam crossroads, howling for children to drag into the underworld. Once honored for their sacrifice in giving life, they became feared in death. Though these demons emerged across continents, they asked the same questions. What is forbidden? What is sacred? What happens when that balance is broken? As organized religion developed, evil became more structured, personal, and terrifying. Demons were no longer just things that haunted the dark. They became part of the moral framework of the universe, reflecting sin, rebellion, and divine punishment. In early Judaism, the cosmos was not yet divided into good and evil. Spirits, angels, and demons coexisted in a shifting hierarchy. Over time, some beings fell from grace. The Book of Enoch III, 1st centuries BCE, introduced the Watchers, angels tasked with watching humanity who defied their duty, marrying mortals and teaching forbidden knowledge. Their offspring, the Nephilim, were giants who ravaged the earth. Though their bodies perished in the flood, their spirits endured, bitter and violent, among the first to be called demons. From the shadows emerged Lilith. In early Mesopotamian lore, she was already a night spirit, a wind demon. Post-biblical Jewish mysticism, especially the alphabet of Ben Sira, recast her as Adam's first wife, cast out for refusing submission. In exile, she became the mother of demons, seducer of men, and killer of infants, a demon born not from hell, but from rejection. Then came Asmodeus, a demon king in the Book of Tobit, embodying lust and destruction, notorious for killing the husbands of a woman named Sarah on their wedding night. In later Kabbalistic writings, demons like Asmodeus were arranged into hierarchies, each assigned names, roles, and weaknesses. The Jewish demon became a defined figure, a cautionary spirit with a history. Christianity then transformed these chaotic entities into a disciplined army. Satan, originally a Hebrew term meaning adversary, evolved into the fallen morning star, cast from heaven with a third of the angels. These fallen angels became demons, powerful, corrupted intelligences driven by envy and rage. Church thinkers debated their nature. Augustine of Hippo claimed that evil had no substance. It was simply the absence of good. Demons could not act independently, but they could tempt, whisper, and distort. Centuries later, Thomas Aquinas classified demons according to the sins they embodied: lust, greed, pride, mapping their influence across the world. The space between heaven and earth became their domain, the human body their battlefield. Possession was real, exorcism essential, and demonology became formal doctrine. They were no longer random spirits but foot soldiers in the war for human souls. In Islam, the story unfolds differently, but with equal complexity. The Quran introduces Iblis, a jinn created from smokeless fire. When God commanded all to bow to Adam, Iblis refused, believing fire superior to clay. Cast out for pride, he remained under God's control, granted reprieve until Judgment Day. Iblis and the shayatin act as tempters, deceiving and whispering, but never forcing. Humans still choose. Unlike Christian demons, jinn are morally fluid, some wicked, some righteous. They live, die, marry, and worship. Exorcisms rely on Quranic verses, emphasizing discipline, remembrance of God, and resistance. Across these traditions, one question remains. If God is all-powerful and all-good, why allow demons? Judaism sees them as rebellious spirits, allowed to persist. Christianity frames them as tests that strengthen faith. Islam presents them as instruments of God's plan, with even evil serving a purpose. In every case, demons are deliberate, not random, a mirror reflecting pride, lust, envy, and defiance, asking, "What will you do when no one is watching?" As theology evolved, fear grew. Demons were catalogued, classified, and ritualized. Scholars mapped hell, witches were hunted, and possessions became battlegrounds. Grimoires promised mastery over the infernal. The Ars Goetia describes 72 demons bound by King Solomon, each with a sigil, rank, and function. Some taught languages, others revealed secrets of the past or future, all dangerous. Summoning required precision, magic circles, consecrated tools, star-aligned incantations. Missteps could mean madness, possession, or death. Summoners were warned to wear protective garments, remain inside the circle, and negotiate only from strength. Johannes Weier's Pseudo-Monarchia Daemonum aimed to disprove witchcraft, but ended up codifying demonology, cataloguing demons, their powers, and hierarchies, turning what was once chaotic into a structured system. By the late Middle Ages, demonology had developed a complex structure. Hierarchies were drawn up, naming kings, princes, and ministers of hell. What began as an attempt to expose superstition unintentionally became a detailed field guide for demonologists. Grimoires proliferated. The Key of Solomon, the Grand Grimoire, the Grimoire of Pope Honorius, each adding layers to this infernal bureaucracy. Spells became formal negotiations with forces that demanded exactitude, respect, and ritual precision. While these texts circulated among scholars and clerics, fear spread rapidly through the general population. By the late 15th century, Europe was in the grip of a witchcraft panic. The Malleus Maleficarum, published around 1487 by Heinrich Kramer, became the most infamous manual of the era. It declared witches real, bound to the devil, and irredeemable. It described witches flying at night, summoning demons through sexual rites, murdering infants, and blighting crops. Accusations were often political. Heretics could repent, but witches could not. Torture extracted confessions that fueled the hysteria, engulfing entire towns like Wurzburg and Bamberg. And in Scotland, thousands were interrogated, stripped, and executed. Witchcraft spread like a contagion, social and spiritual, without discrimination. Even sleep offered no safety. Incubi and succubi were said to attack the vulnerable, seducing or assaulting them while draining their spiritual energy. Yet belief in demons also inspired resistance. The Catholic Church formalized exorcism through the Ritual Romanum, combining Latin prayers, holy water, and Christ's authority. Exorcists became warriors and witnesses, tasked with confronting demons, identifying them by name, and casting them out. Cases like Anneliese Michel or Robbie Mannheim would later terrify modern audiences. Echoing centuries-old traditions, rooms became battlegrounds, voices changed, bodies convulsed, while priests chanted and commanded. Other traditions developed parallel methods. In Tibetan Buddhism, wrathful deities were invoked to frighten spirits away. Monks used talismans, bells, and mantras to disrupt the demon's hold. In Africa, shamans acted as intermediaries, diagnosing possession and expelling spirits through music, fire, or sacred herbs. Across continents and beliefs, the goal remained the same. Once the demon had entered, it had to be removed. Before appearing in books of magic, demons had already haunted the visual and literary imagination. Medieval cathedrals featured grotesques, snarling, contorted stone faces, intended as spiritual guardians to ward off evil. Illuminated manuscripts brimmed with bizarre creatures in their margins, blending the sacred and the profane, the scribe's subconscious spilling onto the page. The Renaissance and Romantic eras transformed the demon into a figure of fascination. Milton's Paradise Lost gave Lucifer tragic depth, his pride and eloquence making him more compelling than the heaven he defied. Goethe's Faust brought demonic pacts into the literary spotlight, casting ambition, intellect, and defiance as inherently tied to the demonic. Music, too, embraced the infernal funeral chants, symphonic works, and later black metal expressed the growl of hell, from distorted guitars and corpse paint to screaming invocations. Visual symbols became codified. Horns represented sin, wings symbolized rebellion, fire signified punishment. Humanity gave fear a tangible form, sculpting, singing, and inscribing it across scripture, art, and imagination. By the 19th century, the world had changed. Scientific rationalism coexisted uneasily with a fascination for the mysterious. Amid the decline of old religious certainties, demons returned, not as threats to be banished, but as objects of intrigue and obsession central to an emerging occult revival. By the Renaissance, interacting with spiritual forces wasn't always about banishment, it was about dialogue. John Dee, astrologer and alchemist at Elizabeth I's court, claimed to have received a sacred language from angels, Enochian, a system of calls and sigils that could bridge worlds. Yet even in these angelic communications, danger lingered. Dee's scrying partner, Edward Kelly, often warned that their celestial contacts might be deceptive. Some scholars suspect they were already engaging with what later traditions would label demonic intelligences, cunning entities that spoke in riddles, demanded obedience, and tested the summoner's resolve. Centuries later, Aleister Crowley redefined the dynamic. In the Book of the Law, Crowley received revelation from a being named Aiwass, his holy guardian, whose nature blurred the line between angel and demon. Crowley's system, Thelema, taught that spiritual growth required embracing and mastering the chaotic forces both within and outside oneself. In his rituals, demons were tools, not adversaries. He resurrected names from ancient grimoires, calling them forth through curiosity and power. One central figure of this revival was Baphomet, originally a distorted accusation against the Knights Templar. Crowley and later occultists reinterpreted Baphomet as a symbol of balance, male and female, human and beast, light and dark. Here, the demon was not evil, it was equilibrium misunderstood. From these movements emerged modern demonology, where spirits are approached as spiritual allies. Practitioners study grimoires like the Goetia to engage with them. Names like Paimon, Belial, and Astaroth no longer serve as warnings, but as invitations to knowledge for those willing to pay the price. While some magicians trace circles and summon entities, psychologists looked inward. Freud stripped the supernatural of literal power, but preserved its symbolism. Demons became suppressed urges, death drives, and repressed desires. Carl Jung went further. The shadow was a universal, mythic force, a repository of shame, rage, lust, and trauma that could fester if ignored. Jung's demons appeared in dreams, taking the forms of ancient gods, mythic monsters, and religious devils. Where exorcism was to the priest, individuation was to the analyst, a confrontation with the self so raw it bordered on the sacred. Jung did not deny demons. He relocated them to the human psyche, where they could be destructive or transformative. Then came a final inversion. In 1966, Anton LaVey declared the Age of Satan, founding a religion that worshipped no god, only the self. In the Satanic Bible, demons became metaphors, ultimate outsiders, eternal rebels who refused submission. They embodied strength, indulgence, and vengeance, not through horns and fire, but through the mirror of the human mind. Yet metaphor inevitably bleeds into myth. The counterculture devoured demonic imagery. The Exorcist brought spiritual warfare into suburban bedrooms. Heavy metal conjured Satan on stage, sometimes playfully, sometimes seriously. Hellraiser introduced the Cenobites, beings beyond good and evil who traded pain for revelation. Video games like Doom let players storm hell, turning demons into cannon fodder. Beneath the spectacle, however, the essence remained. The demon was never truly banished. It had merely changed shape. No longer stalking forests or deserts, the demon now resides within, encoded in our fears, evoked in our art, and waiting for those bold enough to confront it. Names may shift, rituals fade, books burn, languages vanish, civilizations collapse, but the demon endures. It slips between definitions, dons new masks, and lingers in the quiet places we avoid. We call it Apep, Lilith, or Pazuzu. We call it madness, temptation, grief, or disease. And perhaps we never defeat our demons. Perhaps we simply learn to live alongside them. If demons have been with us in every age, in every culture, shaping who we are, what does that say about the darkness and the power inside each of us?